Today on Locked On Phoenix Suns, some news around the NBA, some news here in the Valley. It is that time of year, and we have one more season preview question to get to, so let's dive in.
You are Locked On Suns, your daily Phoenix Suns podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back into Locked On Suns. I am Brendon Kleen, a staff writer at Awful Announcing and a credentialed Suns media member. Thank you for making Locked On Suns your first listen to kick off your week. Happy Monday. Don't forget, Locked On Suns, free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. So wherever you're finding us, click that follow or subscribe button to do what thousands of other Suns fans have already done. Become an everyday or get locked onto the Phoenix Suns right here each and every day. Today's episode, guys, is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. Start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Joining me, as always, the executive producer of The Drive on Fox Sports 910 from the wonderful West Valley. How are we feeling on this Monday, Ben Garcia?
Hoping the Phoenix Suns at some point can raise the happiness level in Arizona. It has been a rough stretch between the Diamondbacks and Cardinals, so I'm excited for the Suns season to get rolling to give us something to cheer for, that's for sure.
Perfect time of year to become an everydayer to this here program. Distract yourself from the misery happening elsewhere down Jefferson Street or out in Glendale and just go ahead and lock on to the Phoenix Suns right here. There's also a ton of news to get to, so really that's the main thing here today. NBA news, Suns news. Let's start with the Suns news, Ben. The Wolves are not our primary concern. Mike Budenholzer revealed the starting lineup that this team will roll with after a bunch of discussion and debate all offseason long. Somehow, he just dropped it. He just gave it to us. There was no camp battle or secrets or anything like that. Mike Budenholzer telling Steve Ashburner of NBA.com that it is going to be Tyus Jones, Bradley Beal, Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, and Jusuf Nurkic. What was your reaction when you saw that he was just doing away with any secrets and giving it to us right here off the bat?
Yeah, I'll give my reaction in just a second. Let me just ask you this really quickly. Are you surprised we got this so soon? Like, it feels like you didn't have to do this. Like, you could have waited. You could have let us speculate for a little bit, which they would have had every reason to do so. Are you kind of surprised they dropped this already?
Well, I guess it's two separate things, right? It's like, what did we think versus what did they think? And clearly, Mike Budenholzer coming out and saying this means to Mike Budenholzer, to this Suns brain trust, there was no battle. There was no question about this. So what him saying it now means is we all were making up any sort of debate over this at all. That wasn't real. There was never a possibility. I really don't think that he expects it to be a battle in camp or to be a question heading into the season, and he's just starting us off here. To me, him coming out in an interview that's pretty tiny. I mean, it's a website interview in print on NBA.com, not even on TV or anything. It just means this was never in doubt. So I guess I'm surprised because, like you and I have talked about it, there's some Suns fans who feel this way. It's a change that I could have understood the reasoning for, but I think we all just kind of talked it up more than it ever should have been talked up, is my read on it.
Wow, that's a really good point. I know, like, I've been the one leading this charge. I feel like there's a lot of other people. I'm not going to act like I'm the smartest guy in the world or anything, but I feel like I've been one of the louder voices about Bradley Beal should go to the bench. But I've also had the caveat of this team has every right to start off with whatever starting five they want to, and I will support it, and I have supported. I didn't really think of the aspect of the Bradley Beal to the bench rumors or thoughts or whatever it is, talking about it on any retrospect, have kind of risen slowly but surely.
Yeah, but not from the Suns.
No. And the Suns are showing at this point.
Yeah.
Nope, this was never a conversation, which it makes sense. I don't ever really think it was. But it does say something to Bradley Beal, you're still our guy. What do you think that does for Beal? Just to even have the full support. Even if he knew that he already had it. Just to say it.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know how much he ever thought it was real.
Mm.
Right? I mean, this
you
is just the discrepancy between what fans talk about on the internet and what is reality in real life inside of that building. I have never heard anything that even caused me to think for half a second that they were considering this. I think that the way last season ended, the fact that Beal performed so poorly, his contract, things like that, it made it a talking point. But Beal never spoke that into existence. Even Vogel, who doesn't even work here anymore, never spoke that into existence. They never brought him off the bench last year. They didn't acquire a guy that is a clear-cut replacement for Beal this offseason. I mean, it's good. It is maybe part of what might need to be solved for this team, Ben, but this is all kind of why I was skeptical it was ever going to happen. It's like saying Kyler Murray's going to get benched tomorrow. We can be really mad that Kyler sucked today. That doesn't mean he's going to the bench until Jonathan Gannon or Kyler Murray himself say that's going to happen, right?
Yeah. Okay, that's a really good point. My reaction to it, I'll just kind of go back in time to where I was going to actually talk about it, but I kind of already said it. It's exactly what the Cardinals, the Phoenix Suns should do. They have every right to decide whatever lineup they want to do, and I will 1,000% support it. You know, originally I had said I'd really like to see a lineup of Jones, Booker, O'Neal, Kevin Durant, Yusuf Nurkic. They've decided we're squashing that before this even gets to anything. We don't even want a single person at Media Day asking this question.
Yeah.
What I will say...
That's valid, though, to interrupt you.
It is.
That's valid, because it would have, potentially, the media would have made it a thing tomorrow. So maybe there was more strategy on the part of Bud to put it out there ahead of that potential thing, but we didn't get there, so we'll never know.
What I really like with smart organizations, smart teams, is they have a plan. You might not like the plan, but it's better than not having one. So although there are people out there, not me in this instance, who aren't happy that the Suns are going to run it back, adding in Tyus Jones to this mix, I can appreciate that this team, even if it's a simple plan and we already get it, they have put it out there. This is what we're doing. Don't even ask the stupid question. And this is what we're going to do. And I can full on respect that. Now, this is my caveat to this. If the Phoenix Suns in December, early January, aren't very good, and they're still hesitant or dug in their heels, dug in the ground about keeping this same lineup, I will start pounding the table about what they should do. So I'm happy at least they came out and did this. Although I was thoroughly taken back by it. It just didn't feel like it needed to happen at this point. But maybe that's not what the Suns want to focus on Media Day. Maybe there's just different things about having whatever Bradley Beal not be questioned about that. So I find that interesting. Yeah. You brought up a really good point about that.
So to answer your question that you put out there of what this kind of does for Beal, I do think that there's an element of if he heard the noise, which I would assume he did, and even if he didn't hear noise about starting and benching, and if this was as small of a talking point within that Suns facility as this statement would lead us to believe that it was, he obviously has to be disappointed in how he ended the season, regardless, right? So this is still a season that is going to largely be decided by all of the big three adjusting in different ways to the presence of Tyus Jones, the system that Mike Budenholzer is trying to instill, continuing to take steps forwards on the defensive end. So if I'm Beal, I'm looking at it as I got to keep adjusting. Now there's another wrinkle, and I'm always going to be the guy in this mix that has to change my game the most, because that's just how this pecking order is going to work, and a point guard has to do point guard things. To that end, Mike Budenholzer, part of this answer was him saying, quote, Tyus can help us play faster. He's great with kick-aheads, great with getting teammates involved in transition. In the half court, he's a guy who has always been a high assist, low turnover guy. He can get us organized. Everyone talks about how much talent we have, but hopefully he can put them in the positions to be their best. Any last thoughts on Bud's first real kind of comments on the presence of Tyus in the first place? Does anything surprise you or stand out?
No, none of this really surprises me. I kind of expected it as well. Let me just ask you this, just really quickly. What do you think the vision is for Coach Budenholzer putting Tyus Jones in this? Like, how do you expect this weapons department to be deployed with now what is a traditional point guard in Tyus Jones? I want to know what you think this will look like.
Well, the thing that stuck out to me from that is that he's putting out there that he wants to play faster, right? I mean, like that can be coach speak. That's something that in the NBA is almost like, oh, yep, it's October. A coach said that he wants his team to play faster. Put it on the chalkboard. It's obvious. But I believe it with Bud, and I think that is somewhat of I don't mean challenge in a negative way to the team, but that is a goal that he's presenting to this group of players who did not play fast last year. You know what I mean? And it is putting out there to the media, to fans, to everybody that is one of the things that we need to establish right away. We have a player who can help us do it. It is a mentality we need to embrace. We need to play faster. So that's one thing that we talked about it when we did our preview episode about Tyus Jones of like, is that a realistic goal? Is it just that this team's bound to play slow and his value is going to show up in other ways? So I think Bud putting that out there is important. It at least establishes early on that that's something that they really want to do and that he's going to hold them to it.
Mike was off. I really appreciate that Coach Budenholzer's doing this. I really believe that with an identity, with an idea that everyone is just going towards full steam ahead, just like this, even if it was as obvious as the clear is, as the day is clear. Like, really, yeah. I really respect this from Budenholzer, and I'm excited to see it. And I do think that everyone, including myself, who has screamed from the mountaintops that Beal needs to go to the bench, let's just simmer down for now and let Mike Budenholzer, for lack of a better term, cook.
One thing that was not obvious, Karl-Anthony Towns headed to the New York Knicks. Not a move that I think anybody saw coming here in the final days of September, and yet here he is changing the Knicks. Yes, not a Suns concern, but mostly from a Western Conference standing point, really disrupting a Western Conference Finals team that just so happened to eliminate these Phoenix Suns just about 6 months ago. We'll break down what that move does to Minnesota and whether it makes them easier or harder to beat from a Suns standpoint next. First, today's show is brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL fans, start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. When you get that hunch in the middle of the game to check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more, you can do it all on the same page at FanDuel, where you place your bets. Get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. Let's see. Where do we want to go here? We're in the middle of a whole bunch of things Arizona sports-wise, so I'm going to look elsewhere to, what do we got here? Monday Night Football. The Titans, underdogs on the road. I kind of like them. Their defense has been good, and the Dolphins, what's going on over there? We got the Lions getting 4.5 at home. I kind of like the road team in the first game, the home team in the second game, but you don't have to take my advice. All you got to do is place $5 anywhere you want, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed no matter what. That's FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Ben, let's keep this show rolling. Want to remind everybody to check out Locked On NBA. They will be previewing the season from every direction and probably talking about this trade for days as well on that feed to get you your dose of NBA talk every day as well. But I think we differ on our view and our read of this trade a little bit, Ben. I want to keep it to mostly the Suns-Wolves matchup, but just in general from a Minnesota standpoint, before we break down the nitty-gritty of that, what did you think about this for Minnesota to throw a wrench in their team right here heading into camp?
Yeah, so when I saw this trade, I immediately want to give out my instant reaction right away, and then want to see how that progresses. I got to be honest with you. I haven't changed since texting you, Brendon. I think the Wolves got better. I do think that they got better. Okay. I do think that adding a little bit of physicality in Julius Randle, which I understand, Julius Randle can be the Yusuf Nurkic at times for teams. He can be just infuriating at times, and sometimes even a shot chucker. But Karl-Anthony Towns and Rudy Gobert are soft big men. They just are. So adding a little bit of physicality to that team, I kind of respect them doing that. And at times, Karl-Anthony Towns can drive a team insane. And as you have mentioned before, He's one of the worst contracts in the NBA. I really don't get it from a Knicks perspective, but that's neither here nor there. The Wolves, you added Dante DiVincenzo to it, a scrappy guy that just fits that culture of Jaden McDaniels and Anthony Edwards, and you throw another physical guy in there and Julius Randle. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think I'm in the minority. The Wolves feel even scarier to me, and just looking at it from a Suns perspective. Karl-Anthony Towns wasn't fantastic against the Suns, and at times committed the stupidest fouls, was constantly in foul trouble. I mean, at times they would go at him. I know he's a big body, but I think adding a little bit of physicality to Rudy Gobert is going to scare some teams, although at times Julius Randle can be a cone. I don't know. I'm really curious to hear what you have to say after, 2 days since this has been official. Where are you at on this trade? And even more so on a Suns perspective.
Trade-wise, Minnesota-wise, I think that this was a salary move first and foremost.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest. I don't even know if they care about Julius Randle. I don't think that they did this because of Julius Randle. I mean, how many teams would have... we've had a conversation, right? I mean, we talked about Bradley Beal at one point from a contract standpoint, and I think I threw out that, like, you know, if he has the type of season that optimistically we think he could, where he buys into being a different type of player and contributes to winning at a higher level, that he could really rejuvenate his standing, the way that fans think of him. And I threw out that, like, right now, a lot of fans of the NBA think of him as maybe the worst contract in the NBA. He's in that conversation. And the other guy that I brought up was Karl-Anthony Towns. And, I mean, so just to compare those two, we don't even bother really talking about Beal trades a lot of the time from a Suns standpoint, because it's impossible to fathom what that could be. Yes, there's a no trade clause that has a lot to do with that from the standpoint of Beal, but Towns is just about to start a Supermax extension.
Yeah.
Nobody would have traded for Karl-Anthony Towns outside of the Knicks, as far as I'm concerned. Maybe the Pelicans. They have a really big need at center. There's not a lot of teams that I think would have asked for the opportunity to pay Karl-Anthony Towns $60 million a year over the next 4. To me, this was opportunistically getting ahead of a salary problem that they were going to run into next summer, while still being able to get something of value in return, which to me, more so, is the DiVincenzo and the pick side of it, and then cross your fingers that Randle can give you something. But I'm not going to be surprised if they are closing games with Naz Reid before long, and even starting games with Naz Reid by the time we get to next spring and we're talking about the playoffs. I'm not a Julius Randle believer. I have a little bit of part of me that is curious with a more creative offensive coach like Chris Finch in Minnesota that might use Randle as a center with Reid on the court and do some things like that maybe we could see something out of Randle that we didn't in New York, just unlocking him where he's not operating in such a clogged court and has some better defense around him. I don't think he's bad. I think he's a very good player, but he's not the reason they made this trade. To get to the Suns standpoint, I think that size was the biggest reason that the Suns struggled with Minnesota, and they don't have as much of it anymore.
Okay. So then let me set you up for what is going to be a beautiful social media clip for me to perfectly execute. Where did you have the Phoenix Suns and the Minnesota Timberwolves before this? Were the Timberwolves better, even on paper or on the court, in a 7-game series with Karl-Anthony Towns? Where were they before?
Big picture in the Western Conference.
Big picture.
I have had the Suns at the bottom of a tier that has like 5 to 6 teams at the top of the Western Conference, and I would have put Minnesota near the top of that tier. Suns at the bottom, Wolves near the top. If you had asked me going into the season, if we talked randomly about Minnesota on this Monday, September 30th, and there was no Karl-Anthony Towns trade, I would have told you that Minnesota probably would have beaten the Suns again, or it would have been pretty darn close. Right now, the Suns have a much better chance of beating Minnesota because, I mean, I can give you some numbers, Ben. The Wolves had a 137 offensive rating when Karl-Anthony Towns was on the court in 4 games in that sweep against the Suns last year. He shot like 53% from three. I think in games 2 and I want to say 4, he had massive scoring flurries that helped put the Suns away in those games. He wasn't a 30-point a game, consistent every night guy, but his ability to get hot and do his thing and attack mismatches was really big for them. And I just don't think Julius Randle replicates that. And frankly, I don't think Naz Reid replicates that. So it's an element that they made them what they were that they don't have. And I think now it's a lot easier for me to see the Suns beating them.
Okay. So let me just say this. Let me talk about this. Now that we've kind of covered the aspect between the Timberwolves and the Suns, there is a lost thing here that does need to be appreciated. And it's something at times where I've kind of went after Matt Ishbia. I still believe he's going to be an awesome owner. I think he's had some growing pains. We talked about that on Friday. I won't rehash it all. This is exactly why, because I do agree with you in this aspect. This was clearly at least facilitated a little bit due to salary constraints because of that ownership being in flux with the Minnesota Timberwolves front office. This is exactly why Suns fans, for all of Matt Ishbia's shortcomings that are for now, he'll figure those out. For all of his shortcomings, he has never once flinched at flipping the bill for whatever it takes to get this Suns team better. Even last year, when they were bad, when they didn't work out in the playoffs. So whatever, let's go get Tyus Jones. We're not pawning anyone off. We're not trading Kevin Durant. We're not trading Devin Booker. We couldn't trade Bradley Beal if we wanted to, but we're not even going to do any of that. We are going all in, and I'll flip the bill for all of it. There are maybe 4 owners in the NBA that would do that. I mean, we thought the Timberwolves, who constructed this amazing roster, in which a lot of Timberwolves fans are upset about this trade, even if I don't get it, they don't have an ownership group that says, hey, listen, we were close last year, but we got to get rid of some of these guys. This is exactly why it works, even in this crappy CBA agreement, to have an owner in Matt Ishbia. I mean, it just makes me feel even more thankful that he's our guy. So another way to kind of connect the two there. Your points are very interesting, though.
100%. Denver, Minnesota, teams that have bailed and balked at paying these second apron bills before they ever even came due. I'm going to be curious if the Suns, the Celtics, some of these other teams can actually, and the Bucks, can stomach footing that bill many years in a row. The other thing that the CBA does is it really penalizes you if you are, the frozen pick, something that no team has gotten into yet. The Suns are on their way there. The repeater tax penalties, where the number of dollars and cents that you pay per dollar of your rostered salary goes from $1 per dollar salary, $1.25 tax payment, $1.75 tax payment. That's also lurking beneath the surface. Not to take the air out of the Ishbia thing, but it's just a fascination of whether that'll happen. I'm not even talking about that from an Ishbia standpoint, but hey, Boston just said they were going to sell their team before they had to deal with that. So we are in uncharted territory. There's a lot of teams bailing before the Suns. They even really get to where the Suns are, but we'll have to see how they proceed from there. Let's talk about the Suns, actually, in more specifics here. It is media day, and we have some thoughts on the regular season, which we will probably hear a lot about the depth and the balance and the seeding. How much should it matter? How much should the Suns prioritize the regular season? What could that do for them? Do they have the tools and the goods to actually do it? We'll break that down. All coming up next. First, today's show is brought to you by the Gametime app, the best place to buy any ticket, and Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier by filtering out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Whether you go into your home page, the main menu of the app, and just have it read your zip code and show you what the best deals are across all of Arizona or wherever you happen to be, or you click into a specific event you want to go to, and it shows you the best deals for that event, you're getting the best stuff, along with the seat views and the all-in pricing that already make Gametime the best place to go. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets from top to bottom with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Game Time. All right, Ben, let's wrap it up here. I always want to have you say Game Time when I say what time is it. It feels like it should be a little call and response there from our friends.
There's been a couple of times, because I mute my mic clearly when you're doing a read, but there's times where, I don't know if you've seen it, but I lip sync with you, for sure. For sure.
All right, you're there with me in spirit, even if the people can't hear you. All right.
I'll start saying it.
So, question number 11 here. We're going to only spend 10 minutes on it or so. I said series, and Siri heard me there. How much should the Suns focus on the regular season is the question. And it's no secret, they had to battle to get the 6th seed last year. Their regular season did not go according to plan. They were fighting an uphill battle to come back from 500 or so when all the big three finally got on the court together just after Christmas. How much of a focus would you make changing their fortunes when it comes to that if you're Mike Budenholzer and you're kind of setting that tone here in training camp this week?
Yeah, there's two real questions to this. There's a fan perspective and there's a Suns perspective, in which that's what we're really focusing on. For fans, whatever, you're just really trying to get to the postseason. You want them to get there, and then all bets are off. They could be the 1 seed, but if they don't make it to the Western Conference Finals being the 1 seed, who cares about the regular season? And then there's the actual question. The Phoenix Suns better care about the regular season. There better not be guys taking days. Now, listen, there's back-to-backs. I understand giving Kevin Durant a breather here and there. There's something called just doing smart planning as well. There's something to that. But they better care. People better not be taking days off in the middle of March against the Detroit Pistons where they haven't played in 3 days. They better. They need to use this time to get chemistry, to get cohesion, stability at whatever position, so that next year in the playoffs, or I guess I should say come April in the playoffs, this team isn't trying to figure out what role is which, because that's what we did last year. This is, yes, without a shadow of a doubt, these guys better care about it. Mike Budenholzer better be pulling out all the stops to know what he's going to do in what situation and line up guys accordingly and whatever it may be. That's just where I'm at. They better. They absolutely better take it seriously.
Some of what you just said, I think, is actually a version of what some teams do when they are not totally all in 100% focusing on the regular season in terms of wins every night. I mean, figuring out the rotation, figuring out some schematic wrinkles, those are things that can cost you wins. Let me throw a few examples at you, right? So one of the biggest things that frustrated me about last year and the sweep at the hands of the team we were just talking about in Minnesota is some of the things that they were trying to do defensively, especially with the way that they were using Jusuf Nurkic, were out of left field. Things that they had not repped enough in the regular season. You could make a case that they didn't have the opportunity to do that because they were so injured and because they were rolling with a young, out of its league, out of its depths rotation early on. If they're healthy this year, if they have the luxury of even getting to choose how much to care about the regular season, you could see them maybe experiment with some different defensive coverages or experiment with some different lineups. And that might, it's an exaggeration to say, and they lost the game because of that. But that is a version of how we've seen some teams like Denver last year slow roll and not push for every win. The other thing is, you and I are very excited to see what Ryan Dunn's season could look like.
Yeah.
There's an argument to be made that if you're giving him any minutes before he's 100% earned them, that is not playing for every win. That is playing for development in some ways. What if he sucks and you spoon feed him, and you spoon feed him minutes for the first month of the season, and then we look up and we're scrolling through NBA.com and it's like, they're getting outscored by how much when Ryan Dunn's on the court? That's not maximizing every win. So I guess the question to me is it will tell us a lot if on opening night we see Monte Morris and we see even a Damian Lee and we see, whatever, a 9-man rotation, right? Even just not even playing a lot of guys, or we see them just very much getting to the basics. That's the kind of stuff that I'm curious about in terms of how important it will be. But look, make no mistake, we know Footprint Center can be a boost to this team come playoff time. We know that the Suns have, when they've been at their best, they have been a very, very good home team that really feeds off of that. So it's going to be an interesting balance. They have some things to figure out as far as how aggressively they will push, not to mention the rest days and everything you mentioned.
Yeah, you had mentioned a bunch of stuff there. Really quickly, just kind of going back to the Minnesota Timberwolves thing. They did kind of have to, just to add this caveat, they did kind of have to do things a little bit differently right off the cusp because Grayson Allen got injured. They were asking players to do things and be in positions that they weren't normally set to do. And that sucked because that team was not deep at all. The problem, and I think the biggest issue last year, and we can talk about this in another video, the Suns did not have an identity last year. Well, they did, but their identity was, we have the big three, which is not an identity. An identity cannot be who your players are. It just doesn't work like that. Frank Vogel rolled them out and just said, kind of, save me, save me. Budenholzer, what I'm excited to see, and I don't expect to see it again within the first month and a half of the season, is going to be a lot of slow rolling and figuring out what they're going to do come playoff time. But I need to see a stout, definitive identity from this team, whatever that means. 8-man rotation, 9-man rotation. We're going to go small. At times, we're going to match up differently, whatever it is. I just need to see that in the regular season so that in the playoffs, I'm not guessing what they're going to be like I was doing last year. And I expected them to beat the Timberwolves. And I was clearly wrong because I had no idea what this team was, even though I wanted to act like I did know it was. And so a lot of that is a Mike Budenholzer thing. So I expect that from him 100%.
So I guess to segue that into Media Day a little bit, it kind of works out. Like, I'm going to be curious to hear how much he wants to throw at this team. You know what I mean? How top to bottom is the revolution of style going to be, right? Like, I mean, is it going to be, we want to shoot some more threes. We want to build off of how this team played a little last year, implement Tyus Jones, and, we'll go from there? Or is it like, we really feel like this team was not optimized and we have a lot of work to do to get where we want to go? And that could mean that the beginning of the season is not as, they're not 25-5, or I don't know if they could be, but they're more like 18-12 or something. And that'll make a difference when we're talking about, are they hosting a first round playoff series? Like, just to compare it to some of these other teams, right? Like the Thunder, they're not having this conversation. They're going to be amazing right away. I mean, they're integrating like 2 role players, and they've played together a bunch, and they already know their identity, and Shea's awesome. There's not as much to figure out. That team's just going to hit the ground running. The Suns, I do think they're going to have to kind of walk that wire a little bit to decide, are we, giving our guys some lower minutes and playing our depth and implementing some scheme stuff, or are we trying to just win every night from October 22nd on?
Just lastly as well, I would like someone to just loft up the question tomorrow, because I'm certainly not going to do it. I'm not a question and answer guy when it comes to media day stuff. That's just not my lane. I'm not a reporter. That's not what I do. I would like to hear someone ask him what his plan is for the regular season. As just a whole, I would like to hear what he's going to say. Are they going to take it seriously? Because this team, including Kevin Durant, who's won a championship, has no reason to coast through. And it's also, this team has to find an ability to get a top 4 seed. I do not want to see them going on the road in the first round of the playoffs again this year. I just don't want to see it.
Yeah, I agree. And that's obviously the goal. We'll see, how much they push for it. That'll wrap us up. Hit follow or subscribe if you haven't already. We will have our full Media Day recap and reaction for you Monday night into Tuesday morning. We'll keep a couple more season preview series questions going throughout the rest of the week, and we'll have updates and actual news and comments and quotes to talk about as training camp gets underway. We will talk to you tomorrow.